It's week 13. We still have to set our lineups. We still have to fight for the right to get into the playoffs this year. And I hope you all had a wonderful Thanksgiving. My name is Turtle. This is Outlier Fantasy. And today we're going to go over the must-start plays this Sunday for your fantasy matchups. Roll the intro. The first player we must be starting this weekend is Kyler Murray against the Minnesota Vikings. It's been really tough and a shaky season for Kyler Murray if you have him in fantasy and you've been starting him, especially last week where he did not get it done against the Seattle Seahawks. But considering all these factors, that Minnesota is 22nd in fantasy points allowed to the quarterback position, and they're going to be playing in a dome in Minnesota. Going to kind of feel like that same home field environment that Kyler Murray has in Arizona. Mix that in with the fact that he's coming off of one of his worst performances of the season last week. This should be a great bounce back spot for Kyler Murray. And for anyone that feels a little hesitant to play him because of how bad he was last week, don't let that stop you from having a great quarterback play this week. Normally, we usually rip on Kyler Murray, say that his games during the late stretch of the season are far less superior to the ones early in the season. But given he's had quite some bad weeks already this season, I think this is a great bounce back spot. They're not going to be on the road playing in a really cold environment. This is a dome building in Minnesota. These are all good signs that Kyler Murray should be able to just boogie around and do what he does best, scramble out of the pocket, and get rushing touchdowns, which is what we drafted him for. And while we're talking about players who can rush for touchdowns and get open in the backfield and boogie around, let's talk about how we should be rushing to put Bucky Irving back in our lineups this weekend. Bucky Irving is facing the 32nd ranked team, Carolina Panthers, in fewest fantasy points allowed to the running back spot. So that means no other team in the NFL allows more fantasy points on a week-to-week basis than the Carolina Panthers. I expect Bucky Irving to have quite a game. The Buccaneers should be sitting on the ball most of the game. I don't think this is going to be a back-and-forth duel like the Carolina Panthers had last week. I don't think the Carolina Panthers are a terrible team necessarily, but the Buccaneers, with their perimeter weapons, with their run game, with their defense, should be problematic for the Carolina Panthers. And if it's going to be a great matchup for Bucky Irving, we should also be throwing Rachaad White into our lineups as well. And for all the reasons I just stated why Bucky Irving is a great play, Rachaad White is also going to get quite the opportunities in this game as well. The Tampa Bay Bucks have never really committed to one running back this year. It seems like they deploy a plethora of backs, whether it's Sean Tucker, whether it's Rachaad White, whether it's Bucky Irving. They all get the job done in this system. When their number is called upon, they are great. And I expect both Rachaad White and Bucky Irving to have really good matchups this week. And while we're on the discussion of running backs who have really great matchups that must be started in our lineups this weekend, let's go ahead and shift our focus to the next player, which is Jonathan Taylor against the New England Patriots. If you had a time machine and could go back to 13 weeks ago before the season started and said that Jonathan Taylor is going to be in my You Must Start This Week video, I would call you absolutely crazy. I'd be like, yeah, no kidding, Turtle. You're going to start your first or second round pick every single week. But Jonathan Taylor has been very disappointing this year, to say the least. Fantasy owners, after the last few games that Jonathan Taylor has put out, with the recent struggles of the Indianapolis Colts moving the football down the field in general this year, a lot of people would be hesitant about starting Jonathan Taylor this week. But against the Patriots, a team that is 27th in fewest fantasy points allowed to the running back position, Jonathan Taylor makes his video and gets my stamp of approval of a must-start running back this week. And like I said before, it hasn't been pretty all season, but we know that Jonathan Taylor is uberly talented. We know he's a great player who's going to get fed the ball a lot in his offense, given that he's the most talented running back in that room. This should be an evaluation game for the New England Patriots, seeing what they have and what they don't have. And though it's a pretty solid defense, though they will confuse Anthony Richardson at times, even though Anthony Richardson has a good matchup, almost made the video but didn't quite make the cut, Jonathan Taylor definitely makes the cut, and Jonathan Taylor will be fed plenty of opportunities in this game to finally show why we expected him to be a top 7, 8 running back going into the season. And now moving on to another player you probably used a really good draft pick on, or maybe you got him in a trade for the cheap. Marvin Harrison Jr. must be started this week against the Minnesota Vikings. So that's 2 Cardinals this week. 2 Cardinals that you have to be playing this week. And for like the reasons we said before with Kyler Murray, this is the 31st ranked defense in fewest fantasy points allowed to the wide receiver position. Add to the fact they're in a dome. There's no weather conditions or bad weather environment to be worried about in this game. We have a great player and a great quarterback going up against a defense that, yes, has been really good, but glaring obvious matchup advantages if you have either Marvin Harrison Jr. or Kyler Murray. And just like with Jonathan Taylor, it's been a rough season if you have Marvin Harrison Jr. Have been starting him every week. Some weeks have been phenomenal. Some weeks have been head-scratching. But this week against the Minnesota Vikings is a great opportunity to play a guy that you heavily invested a draft pick on. Moving on to the next wide receiver. It was Thanksgiving the other day. We need to be thankful. Tank Dell is the must-start wide receiver this week. Tank Dell against the Jacksonville Jaguars is chef's kiss. A beautiful matchup for us. Jacksonville is 29th in fewest fantasy points allowed to the wide receiver position this season. That makes Tank Dell a phenomenal play this week. CJ Stroud needs to get back on track. The Texans defense needs to get back on track. They're coming off of a tough loss, a game where Tank Dell was kind of quiet, and this must be the get-right game for all the Houston Texans. Tank Dell has also gone 4 weeks in a row without scoring a touchdown. That's got to change this week. They got to figure out a way to feed him the ball in the red zone where he's most effective and has the best connection in the red zone with CJ Stroud. For the tight end position, Cade Otton is a smash play at tight end this week. The Carolina Panthers are 30th in fewest fantasy points allowed to the tight end position. So it's a great matchup for the running back, great matchup for the tight end. This could be ultimately a great matchup for everybody on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Cade Otton was pretty much phased out of the game script really early last week against the Giants, something that I didn't really expect to happen, where the Giants absolutely shut down and unraveled in the first half of the game before we could even get to the third quarter. But that did happen. We have to accept it for what it is. And somebody like Cade Otton has to get the ball in this game. It's sad to say this, and it would have been very shocking coming into the 2024 season, but unfortunately, the Carolina Panthers are a much more competitive team right now than the New York Giants. So if we know this is a good matchup for Cade Otton, and we know this game is probably going to be competitive when the third quarter starts, we gotta trust that Cade Otton is going to have a great matchup this week. Those are all my must-start plays for this week. So again, going over it real quick, we got Kyler Murray, Bucky Irving, Rachaad White, Marvin Harrison Jr., Tank Dell, and Cade Otton. If you stuck around and made it this far into the video, I just want to say thank you so much for watching. I truly appreciate each and every one of you that click on and watch these videos. If you're new here, you like the content, you like the channel, make sure you subscribe down below. It costs you nothing, would mean the absolute world to me. And while you're at it, feel free to like the video as well. Even if you don't like my video, like the video for Pikachu. That's my guy. But again, thank you all so much for watching. My name is Turtle, this is Outlier Fantasy, and I will see you in the next video.